What do people fear more, death or public speaking? Surveys about fears commonly show fear of public speaking at the top of the list. Our fear of standing up in front of a group and talking is so great that we fear it more than death, at least according to some surveys. However, Breden Kumarasamy has been teaching executives how to make presentations since he was in his early 20s. Brenden is the founder of MasterTalk, a YouTube channel he started to help the world master the art of public speaking and communication. Join me as we find out how he is changing minds and helping people master their talk. Hi, this is Bob Poole. Welcome to the Water Cooler Hangout. For over 40 years, I've been helping people like you grow and prosper. Please join me and guests like Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki, Lauren Cordain, Beverly and Tim Walden, Phil Elmore, and more as we share real-life stories about sales, marketing, leadership, creativity, and current events. Need help in moving to the next level? Find out how others have done it by listening to the Water Cooler Hangout. Hi everyone, this is Bob Poole, and I'm here today with Breden Kumarasamy. Did I get that right, Brenden?
You did.
All right, great. How are you today?
Very good, Bob. How about yourself?
Good. I'm down here in eastern Pennsylvania, and you're way up north in Montreal.
You got it. I'm not that far away.
I guess not really in some ways.
Yeah, it's not really.
Straight shot up. So were you born there?
Yeah, born and raised.
Yeah. Do you like it?
Oh yeah, love it. That's why I never left.
Yeah. I've been there a couple of times. I find that it's a very European city in many ways, I think. So yeah, I've enjoyed being there. So you have a YouTube channel and a company called Master Your Talk. Is that correct?
You got it. So the Instagram's Master Your Talk, but the YouTube and company is Master Talk.
Okay, Master Talk. So what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Master Talk is a YouTube channel I started to help the world master communication. And basically how it got started was when I was in university. I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were playing football or rugby or soccer, what I was doing is I was using that same competitive spirit and I would apply it to presentations. So for years, Bob, I presented hundreds of times, coached dozens of people in their communication skills. So when I graduated from university and I got a job in corporate America, or I guess corporate Canada in my case, kind of just asked myself a simple question, which is how do I make a difference in the world? That's when the idea for the channel came to be, because I realized all the information was really bad, and here we are today.
So how old were you when you started coaching other people in this then?
I actually started pretty young. So I started coaching people when I was 19 or 20, and I started the channel when I was 22.
Okay. You know, years ago, I did some speaking, and back then there was a study that was done that said that people had a greater fear of public speaking than they did of death. Does that still hold true, do you think?
No. I think this is just a technique that people use to charge you more money with speech coaching. But I'm just kidding. But I think the reality is, and that's really the message I want to get out there, is anyone can master public speaking. We just need to understand why we're so fearful in the first place. I mean, think about it, Bob. If 100% of all the presentations you've given in your life are mandatory, we don't wake up one morning and go, hey, Bob, you want to get breakfast and present all day? I don't think anyone says that except for me and probably 3 other people in my country.
Right.
That's the thing. When we're taught to believe that something is a chore, then of course we see it as one. We don't want to practice and we're fearful of it. But if we start to see it as a way to communicate, as a way to change, to make a difference, that's when their perception of public speaking will change.
So what people are afraid of speaking, they actually have a fear, they get anxious when they're on stage or in front of a microphone or just in a, I've seen it in a company where you've got, 20 people in a room and someone has to make a presentation. How do you help them get by that fear? What do you do?
Absolutely. For me, there's a couple of things. The first question I would ask people to reflect on is the following. How would the world change if you were an exceptional communicator? when you start to reflect on that question, communication becomes a lot more empowering rather than this fearful mongering thing you just have to do for work. Because you start to realize that public speaking is a lot more than just presentations. It's every interaction you have with everyone around you, from the tough conversations you have with your family to the great conversations you have over dinner, to the delivery guy you talk to on the street, to the person you meet at the park. Every single interaction is communication. So as we start to realize that the quality of our lives will get better, not just our presentations, that's when we start to be less fearful of public speaking. And the second part of that is understanding that the message is more important than the fear. Everyone's going to be scared. I'm still scared, right? You know, when I started coaching executive clients that were double, triple my age, it was really nerve-wracking because I'm essentially giving them advice, and I've lived on Earth less than they've worked in their respective companies, right? So it's very nerve-wracking. But the way that I push through it is by saying, wait a second, there's a lot of people who need my YouTube content who can't afford me. And it's my responsibility to gain the financial resources so I can keep making the production that I do on the channel.
Good, very good. So what are the three things that speakers need to know in order to be successful? What would you say the three top things, I guess?
Right. So I would say it's one tip in three parts.
Okay.
And it's the easiest technique. If you apply this from the entire conversation, I guarantee you'll get better at communication. And the technique is called the puzzle method. So public speaking, Bob, is a lot like a jigsaw puzzle. You know those pieces you kind of put together?
Sure.
Toy? Especially COVID now, I guess everyone's doing puzzles.
Yeah, I was going to say they're all over my house.
Perfect. So you're the perfect person to ask this question to then.
Yeah.
When you think about doing a puzzle, which pieces do you start with first and why?
The edges, of course. The straight edges.
Exactly. And what's the rationale behind them?
Because the straight edges are, there's nothing to go. You only have one direction you can go from, and that's inside, not outside, right?
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. But now the question we need to ask ourselves is, why don't we do that in public speaking? We have a presentation at work, in the boardroom, in the conference room. So what do? We start with the middle pieces first. We shove a bunch of content. We get to the presentation. We ramble through the entire presentation. We get to the last slide, and it sounds something like this. Thanks.
Yeah, right.
It's probably 95% of everything I listen to these days. But there's an easy way to fix this.
Okay.
Treat your public speaking presentations like a jigsaw puzzle. Start with the edges first. Practice your introduction 50 times, not 3 times, not 5 times. Do it 50 times. It's actually not that hard. Each introduction is around a minute, so it'll take you an hour. Same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie. 50 times the conclusion. In 2 hours of practicing, you look at your presentation and go, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. My introduction, my conclusion's really good. And then with that newfound confidence, then you dive for the middle. But remember, much like jigsaw puzzles, I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone who does puzzles on their own. There's like thousands of pieces.
Yep.
That's why you want to do it as a team. You don't need a coach necessarily for this. Get a couple of friends together. Get a Toastmasters club. Work together to solve the public speaking puzzle.
Yeah, Toastmasters is a good source. I mean, back when I was doing public speaking, people would ask me for tips and stuff, and I always directed them towards Toastmasters. It just seemed like a great place to start. You're in an environment where people are welcoming you, and they are in the same place you are, and they want to help. They're looking to help you, and they want you to be successful. So it's a safe place, if you will, to start.
Completely agreed.
So right now we are in the middle of COVID. We all know that. And you make your living from speaking. So how are you making a transition from public speaking and being out in the public? What are you doing?
Yeah, for sure. So of course, COVID was a big shock for me when I started my year. But I think what really saved me was when I transitioned 2 ways. So I transitioned the first way through in-person keynotes to virtual keynotes. Okay. So obviously virtual keynotes are a lot harder, but the idea is if you practice enough, you're able to bring that same level of energy, that same level of enthusiasm. You can still drive sales and get results for the people who are listening to you, and still amaze and inspire. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation, Bob, is now that we understand how to speak in the virtual setting, how do we think about the coaching model? So what I did is I actually transitioned pretty much all of my business from a speaking business where I used to give speaking engagements to coaching clients and how to present, mostly executives that I knew for the year. So I was able to make back my revenue. But I think the lesson for everyone that I want people to know is everything at the end of the day is mindset. Right? It's all about the perception, all about how you think about 2020. A lot of people go, "Oh, Bob, 2020 is canceled. I can't wait for the next year." And my response to that always is, "Oh, can you just go to a bank and get a loan back for it? Is that how lifespan works?"
Yeah, right.
You kind of just go, "Yeah, could you add a year to my life?" I don't think that's how life works. So that's why I always recommend to reinvest your time. And for me, it ended up being through speaking engagements, podcast guesting, and creating more YouTube content in advance.
Yeah, I think I've talked to a few other people who are kind of doing the same thing. They don't necessarily make their living from speaking like you do, but they had jobs or had companies where they did go out and speak to people face to face, even face to face sales. So I'm not quite sure how the sales guys these days are transitioning, from face to face. That should be interesting, like the high ticket sales kind of things. So I'm actually looking forward to speaking to some to see how they are handling it, because putting them in front of a camera and a microphone is a whole different thing for most of those guys. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm curious. Have you run into any salespeople at all that have made the transition to online?
Oh yeah, definitely a couple, and it's still very much possible to get it done. You just need to change the way that you express yourself, or actually rather, keep the same personality, the same energy, but bring that same energy into a virtual Zoom call, even if there's nobody in your house.
Yeah. Well, you were correct too, by the way. The whole idea of practicing and practicing and practicing. I always thought that that was the difference between good speakers and the masters. They're really the masters. What do you think? I mean, what differentiates the world's best speakers from, a good speaker?
I'm sure you already know the answer to this one, Bob, but I'm happy to repeat it for everyone else. And the answer is exactly as you said. What the best speakers do is they present the same thing hundreds of times, right? Whereas most of us, and how the education teaches us, public speaking is actually in reverse. You have 8 classes in university, and you have presentations in each of them. So you're not thinking about the delivery. You just want to survive. You just want to get through the day and your week. So you're not thinking, "Oh, let me sit here and intellectually figure out how to make this the best presentation." No, sorry, the best history presentation in the history of the university. Like, no, you're not thinking that at all. You're just saying, "How do I get a B?" And then you move on to the next one. But if you think about somebody like Tony Robbins, just so people understand, he's been doing the same damn seminar for 40 years.
Yeah.
The same one every single time. Date with Destiny, over and over again. Unleash the Power Within, over and over again. But that's why he's world class. Because he's focused all of his energy on how do I execute the same workshop over and over again. That's why people wait in line to come to his seminars, including me.
Yeah, yep. And I've heard him speak twice, I guess, over my lifetime, and it is the same. And I belonged years ago to National Speakers, and it's an organization for professional speakers, and once a year they get together and speak to each other, which is really cool. But the speeches are the same. I mean, if you've been around long enough, you get to hear them. A good friend of mine actually is Lou Holtz, a football coach from Notre Dame, and Lou's known for doing a lot of speeches. Lou has a lisp. Maybe you know that, maybe you don't, but so he's lived his whole life with this lisp and having to talk like, with the lisp. Never was able to get rid of it. I've heard him speak at least a dozen times, to audiences, and it's the same speech over and over and over again. Little tweaks here and there for a particular audience, but it's the same speech. And, every single time I hear it, I'm still enthralled. I'm still like, oh, my God, I can't believe how good he is and how he's got people just listening. And, at the end of the speech, they're lined up to come up and just to say hello to him and thank him, So, yeah, it's practice, 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 and keep doing it over and over again. So what's I asked you what the 3 things that speakers need to know in order to be successful. What would you say are the pitfalls? What's the worst thing that speakers do that gets them in trouble? And don't say don't practice.
Bob, not practicing. No, I'm kidding. I would say the big thing is, and it's a bit counterintuitive, most speakers don't have enough dinners with their audience members. So what do I mean by that? I think what the world's best speakers do is they have an intimate relationship with their audience members. They understand their psychology, who they aspire to be, what they dream about, and they're able to tailor that message to them. So if I use examples like Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk, just to put it in context for people, they're at a level in their careers where they don't need to talk to the general public one-on-one anymore. They just don't. I mean, Tony and they both have a combined net worth of probably $500 million.
Yeah.
Why does Tony still spend time giving workshops for $500? It's with like UPW, and he's still transforming people one-on-one. He's still talking to people who will add no value to his life, quite literally, one-on-one. Same thing with Gary Vee. I mean, he has a $200 million business with the market agency rather, but he's still signing books one-on-one, still talk. Why are they doing that?
Sure.
The reason they're doing that is to stay sharp, to understand where the audience is going, who they are, so that they can always stay on top of their game. And almost nobody does that, right? Most people, especially let's say they have a podcast, they go, Johnny, you said you want to grow your podcast. How many people listen to your podcast? They always go 50. And I go, perfect. How many people do you know out of those 50? They always go 2. And I was like, well, how do you expect to grow your podcast if you don't know who's listening to your podcast? This analogy applies for everything. If you want to be a master communicator, you need to understand your audiences more than they understand themselves.
Yeah, perfect. And you made me think of something, because I remember a couple speakers that actually used to have dinner with their audience. They would set it up that they would, if it was a seminar and they were going to be one of the speakers over several days, they would set it up that they met for dinner with the audience. They wanted to mingle with them. They wanted to spend time with them. They wanted to, let them see that they're human just like they are, and also get to know them at the same time. So they, smart. It was always smart when I saw that happening, and they always were hits the next day when they gave their speech. So you're a young man, and are you at the peak of your career right now?
I think I'm at just the beginning. There's so many great people out there I still have to learn from, but definitely ahead of my time for sure.
So what's the plan? What's the future plan look like? Do you have one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I realized, Bob, in my journey and talking to my audiences is a couple of things. The first one is actually the most important one is Dale Carnegie was born in the wrong time period of history, unfortunately. He had amazing knowledge, amazing insights, but because he didn't have access to the technology we do today, he can't guest on a podcast. He can't have his own YouTube channel, right, which is the best way to teach communication if nobody can afford you, right? That's kind of like the best medium, as you know. So I had a choice to make. Through a random series of serendipitous events, I ended up becoming, one of the youngest speech coaches in the world. I started coaching C-levels when I was probably 23, I believe. So I think for me, I had a choice, and that choice was, do I still go on my track to be an executive at a company, have a great family, and then be done with life? Or do I become that next person, the person Dale couldn't be, where I can share all of my knowledge on public speaking with the world, so that when I die, people can learn from me forever? So I went with option number 2. So let's see what happens.
I think it's a good option. I think that you're going to be able to do it too.
I appreciate that, Paul. It's very kind of you.
So so far, it's been a good run here for you. What hasn't gone as planned?
Oh, lots of things. I mean, one is definitely the insecurity I had when I started my YouTube channel. It's very bizarre for someone of my age to have that level of communication knowledge, just because I presented hundreds of times. So a lot of people, a lot older than me would look down on my channel. I started sending emails to a lot of university professors to kind of just say, hey, I'd love your thoughts. If you like it, share it with your students, they'll relate to me. And a lot of them, well, they weren't too nice to me. which is very surprising to see from tenured professors. It was a bit surprising. But I think the idea is, I had a lot of insecurity. I didn't post my first video for a month. I just made a ton of mistakes, and I still make a ton of mistakes today.
Yeah.
But I think the big lesson that I would love for people to take away from this is everyone's going to make mistakes. I'm not going to give you the same advice that, failure is just about the journey. What I'm going to say instead is the key to life, as Tony Robbins puts it best, is that the quality of your life is solely determined by the quality of the questions that you dare to ask yourself. And if you ask really hard questions, like, what are you pretending not to know? If you had all the money in the world, what would you do with your time? And if you died tomorrow, what would your funeral speech say about you? When you start to ask the really hard questions and you start to see the long tail, the long game of what you're trying to do, then those short-term failures are just a stepping stone to get to the bigger plan. But if you don't know what that bigger plan is, if you don't even have an inkling of what that is, then I encourage you to search for that first. So that way you can be resilient to any obstacle that you faced on the journey.
So wonderful. Sounds like you want to change the world through your speaking. It sounds like you have a master plan that you're going to be able to change people and change the world. What's the average person, if you were giving a talk to a group of people and they raise their hand and someone says, I want to make the world a better place. How do I do it? What would you say?
I don't get that one a lot. I like it. Here's my perspective on things, and this is unique to me. I think passions are very useless for 95% of people who are listening. So why do I believe that? The reason I believe that, Bob, is because the 5% of people who are listening right now say, well, Brenden, I have a passion. I know exactly what I want to do in life. People need to understand that's a very small percentage of people.
Right.
And I was a part of the 95. I never really had a passion. That's why for me, the biggest advice I have for people is decisions over passions. Decisions are specific. They're actionable. They're time bound. They allow you to move the ball forward. And I'm the perfect example of this. That's why I recommend this question that I've always asked myself. Not what are you passionate about, but rather, what does the world need you most to do right now, and why? What does the world need you most to do right now, and why? When I was 12, the answer to that question was not being a YouTuber on public speaking, guesting on podcasts. I thought YouTubers were rich. That wasn't my thing. I was like, no, I need to get a corporate job out of university, at an IBM or a McKinsey, because my parents were minimum wage factory workers. Right? The goal was never to be an entrepreneur. So that's what I did. I studied really hard. I became an accountant. I got a job at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. But then I got the job. And then I said, what does the world need me most to do right now, and why? And I fell in love with case competitions. I started doing these weird, bizarre competitions where you're presenting to senior executives in your early 20s and you're trying to win to get a job at one of their companies. And I fell in love. I was obsessed with it. I did hundreds of presentations, coached a bunch of people, and I got a job in technology consulting at IBM. It was a dream job, got me out of poverty. I retired my mother. Life was great. And then after that, I asked myself the question a third time. And I realized, because I had made all of those decisions, not passions, decisions, that I was the youngest speech coach in the world. And I said, wait a second. Nobody's sharing this public speaking information. And that's what led to MasterTalk. But that's the point I'm driving. If I never did accounting, if I never did technology consulting, if I never did these competitions, I wouldn't even have the expertise to talk to you today. And most people get stuck on finding a passion, but they don't focus on what is the next move. What is the next thing? And for most people who are listening, the next move is just making ends meet. It's making 70 grand a year. It's making 60 grand a year and living below your means. So you have more time to reflect on the hard questions that I talked about earlier today.
Excellent answer. I like it a lot. So what's one thing that you want to tell us that we don't know about you, that I haven't read about you? What's the one thing you want people to know?
I think it's probably my level of insanity. You know, there's a quote that I live by that I, for some reason, invented, unless someone else takes trademark on that, which I'm happy to give away. But the quote is, be insane or be the same. You know, I'm this odd 22-year-old. I'm not 22 anymore, but, you know, and I started this YouTube channel on communication and public speaking. I went to start coaching executive, but I also live in my mother's basement. I'm literally talking to you on a mattress. I dance alone in my basement an hour a day. I karaoke in 8 different languages. I don't own a car, and I love Justin Bieber. So how does any of this make any sense, Bob? And that's the point. When every decision in your life makes sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you'll probably be very successful. So be insane or be the same.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you for being here today.